I would say archaeology is a major hindrance for people who are Christian and even future or to be Christians because it contradicts the Holy Bible. And I would say there's this observation that I have to offer. I would say divinely inspired. I wouldn't question archaeology if it wasn't for a heavenly Father, a creator that I, meditate on, I guess. Be still and know that He is God. So, an observation that crossed my mind when it comes to a major problem with the archaeological timeline would be the number of transitional species from ape to man that they miraculously discovered. I say that because they don't have that with any other animal. From one species to another, they don't have a dozen or more transitional species. The problem with that is you can't set out to find anything. Well, you can set out to find anything, but not a specific type of species, like a Tyrannosaurus rex. We know they're in the ground. We know that there are more. If you could, they would. That's just a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil is money, and yet, they're not just finding them because you can't purposely find a specific species. So that alone is very revealing. And yet archaeologists have managed to find a dozen at least. I've heard over a dozen, but I won't say dozens. I'll just keep it at a dozen. That's still really bad. Being conservative, for sure, they claim to have found a dozen transitional species from ape to man. Even offshoots. They say some ape species evolved into other species of man, but they died off. I don't know the specifics. I couldn't care less. To have found so many transitional species is just laughable because you can't set out with a goal and achieve it. Once again, if you could, they would do that with Tyrannosaurus rex fossils. That's an obvious goal. Why wouldn't they do that? Because they can't. Even though they know where they've found them, it's like, yeah, they can dig all day long for their entire life and not find a T-Rex skull, even just, cool skull. They're cool. I don't deny that. Let alone, skeleton or whatever. And that applies to transitional species, which they just have not found because they can't. If they were challenged, okay, you claim your goal, you were dead set on finding all these transitional species of ape to man, or various offshoots of man, whatever. Okay, do it. Find another set of at least a dozen transitional species between this animal and that animal. They can't do it because it's not how it works. So that's definitely a problem. Another observation that is very damning, it's a very appropriate word, is there was an edit there because a thing popped up. But yeah, these other observation is conveniently there are, I say, over a dozen variety of ape species that are of all shapes and sizes. that can easily fit into the very famous image of the from ape to man, the walking simulator image, I guess, where slowly but surely the ape gets bigger and bigger, and then the last in line, would be a human. Conveniently, we have apes of all shapes and sizes that could easily be just manipulated. These two things, along with my other video, I made another video, it all starts to add up, and it looks really bad. It's a damning observation. You can't, in conclusion, you can't set out to find any specific thing. You're just not reality. Just, I don't know. You either, I can lead the horse to water, but I can't make it drink kind of thing. The observation is just common sense. It's like using the simple things to realize these complex things are a lie. Not that science is. Archaeology is a real thing. They use methods that I know are legitimate. Specifically, I forget the terms, like cross-referencing, to say triangulation with information, I guess. I don't, other concepts. Archaeology is a real thing, but it's going to be manipulated. If you want to really double down on how damning these observations are, once again, watch my other video. It discusses even more just logical observations that put a real, final nail in the coffin of it's a lie. It's not, I'm not bending over backwards. I'm folding myself into a pretzel. I'm just using common sense and basic observation, which is a legitimate tool to debunk how somebody might make a case, even with evidence. A person builds a case with evidence, which, archaeology, the finds, whatever, though that's evidence. It's just evidence of what? How they interpret it, how they build the evidence, whatever. But then you can look at it with common sense and say, well, wait a second. You make just common sense observations. So that's just another observation. Maybe I know I have many observations. I'm just going to put out videos kind of here and there. But yeah, there you go. I thought of something else to add. Since I have an edit, I might as well just edit in something. I kind of like straight talking and just getting it all out in one go. But when it comes to the ape species, or my bad, the quote transitional species from ape to man, I know that many of them are actual literal fragments. They just, this doesn't match anything else, but it's clearly simian. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It's clearly simian ape, but it's like, doesn't exist now, so must be transitional species. It's fragments. They have fragments, and they count it as a transitional species. And this information is out there. That this is why I say it, and I don't question it for a second. That this is all factual, but ultimately, I'll say the thing that I'm not really a fan of because it should be understood. You have to do your own looking into it. You don't want to just take someone's word for it, especially, the approach I'm using. I totally own how, it's almost like it's so absolute because it's just observations and self-explanatory, but it is based on things that I looked up. So I could be manipulating the things I looked up, but it's out there. It's the extent that the archaeological timeline is a massive deception for people anything that's like a grain of truth that gives perspective, I would cling to. And I shouldn't have to say that for anybody. But this observation, when it popped in my brain, well, several of these observations in this video, the ones in this video, I understood the implication immediately. It just made sense, but I internalized it. What if someone else were to say it? I've heard many observations from people that as soon as I hear it, I understand that just the implications, and I take it to heart, and I'm gonna just own this one and say the implications are on that level, because the archaeological timeline is a complete contradiction of what the Holy Bible says. And anyone who says they're Christian but takes up a lie, they're deceived and deceiving, which is a problem. Especially for those who they don't cling to deceptions. They know, well, this is a contradiction of what the Holy Bible says, so no. But ultimately, because it's widely held, it hinders. It hindered me. It killed me probably quite a few times in my early years, especially. But that's why I can comprehend, when maybe, who knows, over the course of a couple of years, whatever, this logical conclusion would just kind of pop in my brain, and I would immediately understand the implications of it. So I'll throw that out there, even though I don't think I have to. There's this idea that applies to anyone where you simplify it all with, if you have ears to hear, well, there's a thing here. But hey, to each their own. I'm not a big fan of explaining the explanation, explaining why you should listen. There you go. That's it. Obviously, this whole video is explaining something, but there's this disconnect that I see people give into, and I'm going to do it this once so I can reference it. Explaining why I should explain. And, I kind of give in some personal experience as to, why no one would have to explain to me if what I'm hearing sounds logical. And I can immediately recognize the implications. No one has to explain why I should listen to the explanation, but we have a tendency to do that. So it occurred to me, I should probably do it once. That way I can just reference it. It's like, well, you didn't really explain, and well, I explained enough. It becomes you're explaining the explanation. You're explaining why you should listen to the explanation. And that's just not reality. That's not what we are meant to do. Definitely explain, but there are limits. I think people, they get too caught up on wrong ideas, meaningless. I don't know what the right word would be. Who cares? I'm pretty much saying, I'm going to explain why I'm explaining one time, and then I'll just reference it after this if these videos go anywhere. But yeah, there you go.